Longtime Republican Senator Dick Lugar was crushed in the Indiana Republican primary yesterday. He lost to a Tea Party-backed candidate who said the party needs to shift towards the right and that the problem with Washington is that there is too much compromise.
Serving the people of Indiana in the United States Senate has been the greatest honor of my public life. Hoosiers deserve the best representation possible. They deserve legislators who will listen to their entire spectrum of citizen views and work to achieve consensus. They deserve legislators who each day go to work thinking about how they can solve problems that matter to Hoosiers.
Hoosier Republicans want to see the Republicans inside the United States Senate take a more conservative track, and we're looking forward to helping them do that.
Now, I hope you noticed the difference in what they said. Lugar emphasized consensus, compromise, and solving problems. Murdoch, who is unseated him, or at least now is the nominee, emphasized pushing for greater conservatism. Lugar made an even more pointed critique today, issuing this statement. If Mr. Murdoch is elected, he wrote, I want him to be a good senator, but that will require him to revise his stated goal of bringing more partisanship to Washington. He will find that unless he modifies his approach, he will achieve little as a legislator. Lugar, one of the Senate's last remaining moderates, although 20 years ago he was a conservative, not a moderate. He had a history of working with Democrats on issues like nuclear proliferation. In 1991, he collaborated with former Democratic Senator Sam Nunn to help the former Soviet states destroy and secure their weapons of mass destruction. That is a program that is still going on today. During his career in the Senate, Lugar, he backed NATO expansion and insisted that the U.S. paid its dues to the UN. In fact, he was even honored by the Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt Institute a few years ago. Why? For his ability and willingness to work across party lines. Senators on both sides of the aisle reacting today, sounding the alarm about the bitter partisanship that Lugar's loss signifies. Senator Susan Collins said, I'm just devastated. He is a fine person and has made so many contributions to this country's security and to the security of the entire world. Senator Bill Nelson, an intolerance is creeping into our politics that I think is very destructive. And John Kerry said Lugar refused to allow this march to an orthodoxy about ideology and partisan politics get in the way of what he thought was his responsibility as a senator. Just another blow to the moderate center. You'll remember Senator Olympia Snowe. She shocked the GOP when she said she would not come back, blaming partisanship in part for that decision. And a handful of moderate Democrats and one independent won't be back next year because they're choosing to retire. Among them, Kent Conrad of North Dakota, Ben Nelson of Nebraska, Jim Webb of Virginia, and Joe Lieberman of Connecticut, all Democrats or one-time Democrats there. Now, a lot of people have looked at that purge in the GOP and concluded that makes compromise less possible. And Murdoch all but guaranteed that this morning on Fox.
I have a mindset that says bipartisanship ought to consist of Democrats coming to the Republican point of view. I've said many times through this campaign that one of the things I hope to do is to help build a conservative Republican majority in the United States Senate and continue to help the House build a Republican majority and have a Republican White House. And then bipartisanship becomes having Democrats come our way.
So let me see if I got this right. He's not a senator yet. He's just won the primary, and actually that throws Indiana Senate race into a little bit of chaos. It's not clear now if the Republicans will hold that seat. But you've got a Senate candidate who says, my view of compromise is Democrats coming to the Republican point of view. Balance that against an American people, 90% of whom say Congress is feeble and inept and want more compromise. What am I missing?
Well, what's going on is that it's really scary. It is really scary what is going on, especially when you consider 4 years ago, Obama carried the state of Indiana.
It's true.
I mean, but it's because bipartisanship, forget it. He's telling you up front, you come to my point of view, and that's the way we compromise. Well, guess what? Democrats are not going to be willing to do that. And if Obama is elected to another term, that means that absolutely nothing will get done.
Howard, I would be happy to compromise with the Conservative Party as soon as the Conservative Party abandons conservative ideologies and come to a different point.
Exactly. That's unfortunately what bipartisanship means when it's being reported by, I'm sorry to use the expression, a liberal media. The liberal media seems to think. I didn't put those words in his mouth. No, but I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing that. Well, all I'm saying is that it's bipartisan when a Republican does what the Democrats want. But it's not bipartisan when a Republican, as you just made fun of, says the Democrats should do the things we want to do.
I don't agree with that at all. I go back to the Bush tax cuts, which were at issue at the end of 2010 after the election, but before the new Congress took over. The compromise was we'll extend all of them. That is a bipartisan compromise. Democrats wanted the top taxpayers to pay more. Republicans didn't want anybody to pay more. And they wound up, that was actually a compromise on Republican terms. We'll extend all the Bush tax cuts.
There's some things that can be fine-tuned, but Lugar voted for Sotomayor. Lugar voted for Kagan. Lugar voted for the union-favored auto bailout. Lugar voted for the Wall Street bailout. Unfortunately, when you sit in a legislature, once a bill has been put together, there is no compromise. It's either yes or no. And far too often, Dick Lugar has said yes to things that liberal Democrats have proposed.
It's really scary because what's happening in the country is either you're with us or you're against us.
Right.
In terms of Washington.
Can I say just one more thing about Dick Lugar? One of the things floating around Washington to show you how bipartisan Dick Lugar is the possibility, because he was a guide to candidate Obama in terms of many foreign policy issues, he could take the place of Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State if Hillary no longer wants to be that in a second Obama term.
I seem to remember a Republican, Judd Gregg, being nominated or being talked about for, what was it, Commerce Secretary? Or there used to be a lot more bipartisanship. My worry is that we'll hit some sort of crisis and the two sides will be so far apart, you can't ever solve the crisis.